Hey everyone, Sophia here. Welcome to Revenge Shift, where the best stories come to life. Hit subscribe for your daily dose. Pasta had gone cold on my plate by the time David finally came home. It was 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and I'd stopped expecting him at reasonable hours months ago. He still wore his suit jacket, though his tie hung loose around his collar. His eyes were bright in that particular way that came from adrenaline rather than exhaustion. "You're up," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door with a thud that echoed through our penthouse apartment. "I made dinner." I gestured to the untouched place setting across from me. The pasta primavera I'd prepared at 7 was now congealed in its cream sauce, the vegetables limp and lifeless. "It's cold now, but there's plenty." He didn't move toward the table. Instead, he poured himself 3 fingers of scotch from the bar cart, the expensive single malt I'd given him for our 5th anniversary 2 years ago. He drank it standing up, his back to me, looking out at the Chicago skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows that had cost more than most people's cars. "We need to talk," he said finally. Those 4 words. I'd been waiting for them for exactly 11 months and 13 days, ever since I'd first noticed the change, the late nights that stretched later, the phone calls he took in the other room, the way he'd stopped touching me casually, those small intimacies that married people share without thinking. The way he looked through me rather than at me when we passed in the hallway of our own home. "All right," I said, taking another bite of cold pasta. I chewed slowly, deliberately, giving him time to work up to whatever he was about to say. My hands were perfectly steady. He turned to face me then, and something in his expression made my stomach tighten. Not guilt. Not shame. Something closer to relief, as if he'd been carrying a burden and was finally setting it down. "I've been sleeping with Clara," he said. Just like that. No preamble, no apology, no context. "My boss. We've been involved for over a year now." I set down my fork with deliberate precision, the tines clicking against the porcelain plate. "I see." Multiple times he continued, and now there was something almost challenging in his tone, as if he wanted me to react, to give him the satisfaction of my pain. "In her office after everyone else left, in her car in the parking garage. At the Belmont Hotel on Thursday afternoons. I don't regret it, Sarah. She understands my work in ways you never could." The apartment was very quiet. Somewhere far below, a siren wailed through the city streets. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. The ice maker dropped cubes into its bin with a mechanical clatter. "Thank you for clarifying where things stand," I said calmly. His face changed then. He'd expected tears, I realized. Shouting. Maybe me throwing something. Creating a scene dramatic enough to justify whatever narrative he'd constructed about our marriage. Instead, I simply folded my napkin and placed it beside my plate, movements as controlled as a hostess at the end of a dinner party. "That's it." He said, "That's all you have to say." "What would you like me to say, David?" "I just told you I'd been having an affair for over a year, with my boss. And you're sitting there like I told you I'd be late for dinner." I stood up, carrying my plate to the kitchen. "You have been late for dinner, consistently, for 11 months and 13 days. To be precise." I scraped the cold pasta into the garbage disposal. "I'm simply acknowledging the truth of our situation. You're not even upset." I rinsed the plate under water that was almost too hot to touch. "I didn't say that. I said I understand where things stand now. There's a difference." He followed me into the kitchen, his scotch glass still in hand. Up close, I could smell her perfume on his collar. Something expensive and musky, with notes of amber and vanilla. Not my scent at all. "Clara's brilliant," he said, and there was something almost defensive in his voice now. "She has 2 MBAs and a law degree. She speaks 4 languages. She's a senior partner at 38. When we talk about derivatives and market positioning, she doesn't just nod along pretending to understand. She challenges me. She makes me better. I'm sure she does. You teach 2nd grade, Sarah. You spend your days wiping noses and reading picture books. We're not on the same intellectual level anymore." Maybe we never were. There it was. The thing he'd probably been wanting to say for years, finally spoken aloud. I dried my hands on a kitchen towel, taking my time with each finger. "You're probably right," I said. "We do seem to be operating on different levels." Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe. Or disappointment that I wasn't fighting back, wasn't giving him the conflict he seemed to want. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight," he said finally. "We can talk about logistics in the morning. The apartment, finances, all of that. That sounds reasonable. He stood there for another moment, as if waiting for me to break, to finally give him the emotional reaction he was looking for. When I simply turned and began loading the dishwasher, he walked away. I heard the guest room door close with a soft click. Only then did I allow myself to breathe fully. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline I'd suppressed finally flooding through my system, but I didn't cry. I'd done my crying months ago when I'd first suspected the truth. Tonight was simply confirmation of what I'd already known. I pulled out my phone and composed a text message to a number I'd memorized but never saved in my contacts. He confessed, unprompted, unremorseful, specific details provided willingly. The response came within 30 seconds. Recorded? I glanced at the small device hidden inside the decorative bowl on the kitchen counter. Its tiny red light invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Every word. Good, we'll meet tomorrow. 2 p.m., usual place. I deleted both messages and finished cleaning the kitchen. The apartment gleamed around me. This showpiece of David's success that I decorated and maintained and hosted countless dinner parties in. Every surface was perfect, every detail curated. It had never felt like home. 11 months and 13 days earlier, I'd done something that second-grade teachers aren't supposed to do. I'd hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, and he'd come recommended by another teacher at my school whose husband had cleaned out their joint accounts before disappearing to Florida with his dental hygienist. Marcus was ex-FBI, 53 years old, with gray hair cropped military short and eyes that noticed everything. "Tell me what you've observed," he'd said at our first meeting, in a coffee shop far enough from my neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I'd laid it out systematically. The pattern of late nights that always fell on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The new cologne. The way David had suddenly started going to the gym at 6 a.m. instead of after work. The business trips that seemed to require more overnight stays than they used to. The way he'd password protected his phone after 7 years of marriage where we'd always known each other's codes. No concrete evidence, I'd finished. Just a feeling that something has fundamentally changed. Marcus had nodded slowly. In my experience, feelings like that are usually right. Our subconscious picks up on patterns before our conscious mind wants to acknowledge them. What do you want from me? The truth, whatever it is. If he's having an affair, I want documentation. If I'm being paranoid, I want to know that too. And if it is an affair, what then? I'd thought about that question for weeks before I'd called him. Then I want everything. Every meeting, every location, every person involved. I want evidence that would hold up in court. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make any decisions. That's going to take time. And money. I have both. I'd slid an envelope across the table. Inside was $10,000 in cash, withdrawn from an account David didn't know I had. Money I'd been saving since before we got married, a habit learned from a mother who'd once told me to always keep something that was just mine. Marcus had taken the envelope without counting it. "I'll start tomorrow. I'll send you updates through an encrypted messaging app. Don't call me unless it's an emergency. Don't tell anyone you've hired me. And Mrs. Whitmore? Prepare yourself." If there is something going on, seeing it documented is often harder than suspecting it. He'd been right about that. The first photos had arrived 3 weeks later. David and Clara Whitmore, his boss, the senior partner who'd mentored him for the past 3 years, entering the Belmont Hotel separately, 14 minutes apart, both carrying overnight bags. Marcus had included the timestamps, Thursday 2:47 p.m. They'd emerged at 6:23 p.m. A full 3 hours and 36 minutes later, the next week brought more photos. The same hotel. Thursday at 2:51 p.m. Exit at 6:19 p.m. A pattern so consistent it might as well have been scheduled in Outlook. Then came the Tuesday surveillance. Not the hotel this time, but the parking garage at David's office building. Level B3, in a corner away from the security cameras. Marcus had positioned himself with a telephoto lens. The photos showed David's BMW pulling in at 7:47 p.m. Clara's Mercedes arriving at 7:52 p.m. Both cars rocking slightly in a way that made the situation unmistakable. "This is systematic," Marcus had written. "They've been doing this long enough to have established patterns. That makes them comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes." I'd studied each photo with the same careful attention I brought to grading my students' work, looking for details, for context, for the story beneath the surface. In one image, I could see Clara's hand on David's cheek through the car window. her wedding ring catching the fluorescent parking garage lights. She was married too, I'd realized. This wasn't just an affair. It was a dual betrayal. I need audio, I'd told Marcus at our next meeting. Photos aren't enough. I need to hear what they say to each other. That's more difficult. Legally complicated. But possible? Marcus had studied me for a long moment. You're not what I expected. Most people in your situation are emotional, crying, angry, impulsive. You're methodical. I'm a teacher. I deal with problems systematically. First identify the issue, then gather information, then make a plan, then execute. Being emotional doesn't help my students learn, and it won't help me now. Fair enough. He'd pulled out a small device, no bigger than a button. Voice-activated recorder. Range of about 30 feet. If you can plant it in his car, we'll get audio of their conversations. I'd thought of a dozen ways that could go wrong. If he finds it, he won't. Not unless he's specifically looking for it and he has no reason to suspect anything. You said he thinks you're too trusting, too focused on your teaching to notice what he's doing. Use that assumption against him. So I had. The next Tuesday morning, while David showered, I'd placed the device under the driver's seat of his BMW. My hands had been steady, my heartbeat had been calm. I'd simply been solving a problem. The audio that came back had been worse than the photos. God, I needed this, Clara's voice, slightly breathless. My husband was home all weekend. We couldn't get away. Tell me about it. Sarah made Sunday dinner for my parents. 4 hours of small talk about her classroom, and my mother asking when we were going to have kids. I thought I'd lose my mind. Do you think she suspects anything? David's laugh. Sarah? No, she's too trusting, too caught up in her little world of second graders and field trips. She doesn't ask complicated questions because she doesn't think in complicated terms. That's what makes this so perfect. Still, we should be careful. We have been careful. 11 months and she hasn't noticed a thing. She's not stupid exactly. She's just ... simple. Sweet. But simple. You're the first person I've been with who actually challenges me intellectually. What are you going to do long term? A pause. The sound of traffic in the background. The hum of the car engine. I don't know yet. Divorce is expensive, complicated, and Sarah doesn't deserve to be hurt. She hasn't done anything wrong. Except be boring. That's not fair. She's a good person. Just not the person I need anymore. But I am. You know you are. I'd listened to that recording 17 times. Not because I needed to hear it again, but because I needed to memorize every word, every inflection, every casual cruelty. I needed to let it burn away any remaining sympathy I might have felt, any hesitation about what I was planning. Marcus had continued his surveillance. 53 documented meetings over 11 months. 31 at the Belmont Hotel, 18 in the parking garage. 4 at Clara's house when her husband was traveling for business. Every single one meticulously photographed, time-stamped, and filed. There's something else, Marcus had said at one of our meetings, sliding a folder across the table. I started looking into their professional relationship. Your husband reports directly to Clara. She's been advocating for his promotion to junior partner. There's a board meeting scheduled for next month where his name is on the agenda, so the affair might be professional as well as personal. In my experience, it usually is. Power dynamics like this rarely exist in a vacuum. I can't prove quid pro quo yet, but the timeline suggests his rapid advancement correlates directly with the beginning of their relationship. I'd open the folder. Inside were organizational charts, promotion histories, salary information that Marcus had somehow obtained. David's compensation had jumped 40% in the past year. His bonus structure had changed. His path to partnership, which had seemed years away, was suddenly accelerating. How did you get this information? Marcus had simply smiled. I have friends in various places. Let's leave it at that. What should I do with it? Depends on your goal. If you just want a divorce, you have more than enough evidence. But if you want to address the professional aspect, that's a different conversation. That would involve their employer, potentially regulatory agencies if there's any suggestion of impropriety in how his promotion was handled. I'd close the folder, my decision already made. I want everything. I want the full truth to come out, whatever that means, even if it destroys his career. He told me I teach second grade like it's something to be ashamed of. Like spending my days helping children learn to read is somehow less valuable, than whatever he does in his corner office. He said, I don't think in complicated terms. I'd met Marcus's eyes. Let me show him exactly how complicated my thinking can be. Marcus had nodded slowly. Then we need to bring in some additional people. A lawyer, obviously, but also someone who understands corporate governance and ethics violations. What your husband and Clara are doing might not just be morally wrong. It might be against their firm's policies. And if there's any suggestion that her support for his promotion is connected to their personal relationship, that's a problem their board will take very seriously. So I'd assembled my team. Patricia Reeves, the divorce attorney another teacher had recommended. Samuel Chun, a corporate ethics consultant who'd worked with Marcus on previous cases. And I'd kept teaching, kept coming home to our cold apartment, kept playing the role of the sweet, simple wife who didn't notice anything wrong. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd known exactly where David was and what he was doing. Every evening he came home late. I'd known why. Every time he kissed me absently on the forehead before heading to the guest room because he was exhausted from work. I'd known the real reason for his exhaustion, and I documented everything. The joint credit card statements showing hotel charges, the mileage on his car, the pattern of texts that suddenly stopped coming during specific afternoon hours. I de-photographed his calendar, his receipts, his dry cleaning tickets. I'd become an evidence collector, methodical and thorough, building a case the way I'd build a lesson plan. The hardest part had been the waiting. 11 months and 13 days of knowing the truth but not confronting it. Of sleeping in the same apartment as someone who thought I was too simple to see what was right in front of me. Of maintaining normalcy while everything underneath was dissolving. But I'd learned patience from teaching 7-year-olds. I'd de-learned that sometimes you had to let a situation fully develop before you could address it properly. I'd learned that acting too quickly before you had all the information often made things worse. And then, finally, David had confessed, unprompted, unremorseful, with specific details that would make everything that followed so much simpler. The next morning, I woke to find David already awake, sitting at the kitchen counter with his laptop and a cup of coffee. He'd showered and changed into fresh clothes that must have been in the guest room closet. His hair was still damp. I've been thinking, he said as I entered, about the logistics. This apartment is in my name, but obviously you can stay here as long as you need to while you find a place. I'll cover your first and last month's rent somewhere, plus moving expenses. That seems fair. I poured myself coffee, my movements unhurried. That's thoughtful of you. And the bank accounts. We should probably split things 50-50. I'll have my accountant draw up the paperwork. It shouldn't take more than a few weeks to finalize everything. I see. Sarah. He closed his laptop, turning to face me. I know this is difficult, but I think we can handle this like adults. No drama, no fighting. Just a clean separation. Is that what Clara suggested? His jaw tightened. Clara has nothing to do with how we handle this. Of course not. I sipped my coffee. It was too hot, but I didn't let my expression change. When are you planning to tell your parents? I thought we could do that together. This weekend, maybe. Tell them we've been growing apart, that it's mutual, that we both want what's best for each other. That sounds very civilized. You're being weird, he said suddenly. This calm thing you're doing, it's unnatural. Would you prefer if I screamed at you? Through things? That seems exhausting. I'd prefer if you acted like a human being whose marriage just ended. I set down my coffee cup. My marriage ended 11 months and 13 days ago, David. Last night was just when you finally told me about it. He stared at me for a long moment. You knew? I suspected. Now I know. There's a difference. And you said nothing? All this time? What would you have wanted me to say? Would you have stopped? Would you have chosen differently if I'd confronted you 6 months ago? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I need to get to school, I said, checking my watch. I have parent-teacher conferences today. 23 meetings scheduled back-to-back. Children's literacy levels and behavioral assessments to discuss. Simple things, I'm sure, compared to derivatives and market positioning. Sarah, I'll be home around 6. We can continue this conversation then if you'd like. Or not, whatever you prefer. I left him sitting at the counter, his coffee going cold, his expression caught between guilt and confusion. I'd given him what he wanted, after all. A clean exit, no drama, no complications. I wondered how long it would take him to realize that sometimes the absence of a fight was more dangerous than the presence of one. At 2 p.m., I sat in Patricia Reeves' office, a space filled with dark wood furniture and diplomas from impressive universities. Patricia herself was 56, with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that missed nothing. "Tell me everything," she said, her pen poised over a legal pad. So I did. I walked her through the 11 months of surveillance, the 53 documented meetings, the audio recordings, the evidence of professional impropriety. I handed her 3 USB drives and a folder 4 inches thick. Patricia had been making notes, but as I continued, her pen stilled. She started reading through the documents, her expression growing more intense with each page. "This is substantial," she said finally. "More than substantial. This is a prosecutable case, not just for divorce, but potentially for ethics violations at their firm. Senior partner engaging in a relationship with a direct report who she's advocating to promote. That's textbook quid pro quo. What can we do with it? First, we file for divorce. No fault, but we include the infidelity in our petition because Illinois allows it as grounds. Then we go after assets. The apartment, the investment accounts, his pension, his partnership track. All of it is marital property. He said he'd give me 50-50. Patricia's smile was sharp. He'll say a lot of things. But once he realizes how much documentation you have, once he understands that you could make this very public and very ugly, he'll agree to much more than 50%. My initial assessment? You re-looking at a settlement worth somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million. The number seemed impossible. That much? His current salary is $360,000. His partnership track puts him at close to $700,000 within 2 years. His bonuses average $150,000 annually. The apartment is worth $1.1 million, and it's in both names despite what he told you. You've been married 7 years, which in Illinois means you're entitled to substantial spousal support plus asset division. And that's before we factor in the emotional distress caused by the affair and his professional misconduct. What about Clara? That's where this gets interesting. Patricia pulled out another document. I've been doing some research into their firm. They have a strict ethics policy about relationships between supervisors and direct reports. Violation of that policy is grounds for immediate termination. And if there's any suggestion that she used her position to advance his career in exchange for the relationship, that's potentially criminal. Criminal? Criminal? Fraud, ethics violations, possibly even embezzlement if we can prove she directed company resources towards supporting him inappropriately. But more importantly for your purposes, it gives us significant leverage. Because if this information goes to their board of directors, both of them lose their jobs. And I guarantee Clara doesn't want that. You want to use it as leverage? I want to use it as a nuclear option. Something we don't necessarily deploy, but that everyone knows exists. David wants a clean, quiet divorce? Fine. That costs him 75% of marital assets and ironclad agreements about spousal support. Clara wants to keep her partnership? That requires her husband to be informed about the affair and her cooperation with the divorce proceedings. I thought about Clara's voice on those recordings, casual and dismissive. Sarah's too trusting to ask complicated questions. I want her husband to know. Richard Whitmore. He deserves to know what his wife has been doing. Patricia nodded. I can arrange for that information to reach him through appropriate channels. But Sarah, you need to understand that once we start this process, it becomes public. Maybe not tabloid public, but certainly within their professional and social circles. People will know. There will be gossip. I teach 2nd grade. My professional reputation isn't tied to my husband's career. And honestly, I don't care who knows. They weren't ashamed of what they were doing. Why should I be ashamed of exposing it? Good, then let's move forward. I'll have divorce papers drawn up by tomorrow. How do you want them served? I thought about David sitting in his corner office, the one he'd been so proud of, the one Clara had probably approved. Can they be served at his workplace? Patricia's smile widened. They absolutely can. Samuel Chun's office was smaller than Patricia's, but more modern, all glass and minimalist furniture. He was 42, Stanford MBA, with experience investigating corporate ethics violations for the ASEC. Marcus sent me everything you've collected, Samuel said, pulling up files on his computer. I've been reviewing the timeline. Your husband's promotion trajectory changed dramatically starting 14 months ago. which is right around when their relationship began based on the surveillance. What does that mean? It means there's a pattern suggesting quid pro quo. Clara started advocating for him professionally at the same time they became involved personally. His performance reviews, which were good but not exceptional for the previous 3 years, suddenly became outstanding. His billable hours actually decreased, but his client ratings went up. His bonus structure changed to one typically reserved for more senior associates. She was giving him advantages. She was fast-tracking him. And the problem is, there were 3 other associates at his level who were performing better on paper. One of them, Jennifer Martinez, had higher billable hours, better client reviews, and a similar tenure. She should have been next in line for promotion. Instead, David jumped ahead of her. Can you prove the connection? Not in court, not definitively. But I can create enough questions that their firm's board will have to investigate. And once they start digging, they'll find the patterns. The private meetings in Clara's office after hours. The business trips they both attended where hotel rooms were on the same floor. The emails they exchanged that were technically professional but contained personal undertones. What happens if you bring this to their board? Samuel leaned back in his chair. Best case scenario for them? They both get fired quietly with some face-saving exit story. Worst case? The board reports it to regulatory agencies. There's a formal investigation. Their conduct gets scrutinized publicly, and they both lose their professional licenses. It depends on how deep the misconduct goes and how angry the board is about being put in this position. And Jennifer Martinez, the woman who should have been promoted? She has grounds for a discrimination lawsuit. If she can show that David was promoted over her because of his personal relationship with a senior partner rather than merit, that's actionable. The firm would likely settle with her to avoid a public trial. I thought about Jennifer Martinez, whoever she was, working hard and playing by the rules while David advanced because he was sleeping with the boss. She should know. She should have the opportunity to take action if she wants to. I can arrange for that information to reach her attorney. Anonymously, through channels that won't trace back to you. Do it. Samuel made a note. You understand this is going to destroy both of their careers, right? Once this starts, there's no walking it back. David won't just lose his promotion. He'll likely be terminated and blacklisted in the industry. Clara will definitely lose her partnership, possibly her license. They'll both be unemployable in their field. They made their choices. I'm just making sure those choices have consequences. Fair enough. Samuel closed his laptop. Give me 3 days. I'll have a complete report ready for the board, for regulatory agencies if needed, and for Jennifer Martinez's legal team. Once that report exists, it becomes leverage. The question is whether you want to use it as a threat to secure better divorce terms, or whether you want to actually deploy it. Can I do both? Samuel smiled. I like the way you think. That evening, David came home at a normal hour for the first time in months. He found me in the living room, grading papers, my red pen moving steadily across spelling tests. We need to talk about the timeline, he said, sitting down across from me. For the divorce, I'm thinking we should aim for 60 days. Quick and clean, minimal court involvement. That seems rushed. Why wait? We both know this is over. Dragging it out just makes everything more painful. I set down my pen. What about Clara? How does she feel about the timeline? His expression tightened. I told you, Clara has nothing to do with this. But she does, doesn't she? If you're divorced quickly, if there's no messy court proceedings, then your professional life stays clean. Your promotion stays on track. You and Clara can continue your relationship without the complication of you being married. This isn't about her. David, please don't insult my intelligence any more than you already have. You told me last night that you've been sleeping with your boss for over a year. Your boss who controls your career advancement. Your boss who is also married. Obviously, she's a factor in how you want this divorce to proceed. He stood up, pacing to the windows. Fine. Yes, Clara and I have discussed it. We want to handle this correctly, minimize damage to everyone involved. That includes you, Sarah. A quick, quiet divorce protects your privacy too. How thoughtful. Why are you being like this? Yesterday, you were calm, understanding. Now you're being sarcastic and difficult. I'm not being difficult. I'm being realistic about what a divorce actually entails. Assets need to be valued. Accounts need to be divided. Legal documents need to be drafted and reviewed. 60 days isn't realistic for the kind of settlement we're going to need. What settlement? I said I'd give you 50-50. That's more than fair. 50-50 of what, exactly? The apartment? The investment accounts? Your pension? Your partnership track? Your future earning potential that was built during our marriage? What about spousal support? What about the fact that I put my career on hold to support yours? You didn't put your career on hold. You're a teacher. That's what you wanted to be. I have a master's degree in education. David, I could have been a principal, a curriculum director, a district administrator. But you wanted someone who could attend your work functions, host your dinner parties, maintain your home. So I stayed in the classroom because it gave me the flexibility your career needed. Nobody forced you to do that. You're right, nobody forced me. Just like nobody forced you to sleep with your boss. We made our choices. Now we live with the consequences. He turned from the window, his expression hardening. What exactly do you want, Sarah? I want what I'm entitled to under Illinois law. I want a fair division of all marital assets, including future earnings that were built during our marriage. I want spousal support that reflects the lifestyle I've become accustomed to. And I want you to understand that I'm not the simple, trusting person you thought I was. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you that I have legal representation. Patricia Reeves. Perhaps you've heard of her. She's considered one of the best divorce attorneys in Chicago. The color drained from his face. When did you hire her? That's not really relevant, is it? What matters is that I have proper counsel now. And she'd be reaching out to your attorney once you retain one. I assume you'll want your own representation for this process. Jesus Christ, Sarah. You've been planning this. No, David. You've been planning this. For over a year, apparently. I'm just responding to what you set in motion. I gathered up my papers. I'm going to finish grading in the bedroom. I'd appreciate it if you'd sleep in the guest room again tonight. I think we've said everything we need to say for now. I left him standing by the windows, his reflection ghost-like in the darkening glass. Behind me, I heard him pour another scotch. And then another. The bottle clinked against the glass 3 times before I closed the bedroom door. The divorce papers were served at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, 3 days after David's confession. I know because Patricia called me to confirm. He was in a meeting with 4 other senior associates, she said, her voice professionally neutral but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. The process server walked right into the conference room and handed him the papers in front of everyone. Very dramatic. How did he react? According to the server, he went completely white, excused himself from the meeting, and disappeared into his office. He's been in there with the door closed for the past hour. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. David, I declined it. He's calling me, I told Patricia. Don't answer. Not yet. Let him sit with it. Let him read through every page and understand exactly how much documentation we have and how serious you are. Then, when you do talk to him, he'll be more reasonable. My phone buzzed again, then again. By noon, I had 17 missed calls from David. At school, I taught fractions to my second graders, helped Emma Richardson sound out beautiful for the 4th time that week, and supervised recess. Normal day, normal routine. Except my phone kept lighting up in my desk drawer. Call after call after call. At 3 p.m. during my planning period, David finally switched to text. We need to talk. Now. This is insane. Call off your lawyer. 75% of assets? You can't be serious. I'll fight this. You won't get a dime. Clara says you're being vindictive and unreasonable. That last message made me smile. So Clara knew already, of course she did. David had probably called her immediately, looking for support, for validation that I was being unreasonable. I wondered if she'd started to realize yet how much danger she was in too. I responded to only one message. All communication should go through our attorneys. Patricia Reeves represents me. Please have your lawyer contact her. Then I muted his number and went back to planning next week's lessons on cause and effect. The irony wasn't lost on me. That evening, David showed up at the apartment at 6:30. I'd beaten him home by 20 minutes and was making dinner, a stir-fry with vegetables I'd picked up from the market that morning. The mundanity of cooking felt grounding, normal, like an anchor in a sea of change. He came through the door without knocking, even though I'd changed the locks that afternoon. He must have talked his way past the doorman, used his old key, found it didn't work. He looked terrible. His tie was gone, his shirt wrinkled, his hair standing up as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "You changed the locks," he said. "It's my apartment now. Or it will be, according to the settlement." Patricia filed an emergency motion for exclusive occupancy. The judge granted it this afternoon. "You can't kick me out of my own home. Your home, not our home. You made that clear when you told me you'd been sleeping with someone else in hotels for a year." I continued stirring the vegetables, the smell of garlic and ginger filling the kitchen. "Would you like dinner?" "There's enough for two." "I don't want dinner. I want to know what the hell you think you're doing." "I'm making stir-fry and protecting my interests in our divorce." Those seem like reasonable things to be doing. 75% of assets, spousal support for 5 years. You're trying to destroy me financially. I'm trying to secure what I'm entitled to under Illinois law. If that feels like destruction to you, perhaps you should have thought about that before you decided to betray your marriage vows. It was an affair, Sarah. People have affairs. It doesn't mean you get to take everything I've worked for. I turned off the stove and faced him. "You worked for it during our marriage, which makes it marital property. That's how community property law works. You're a smart man, David. Surely you understand the legal principle. Clara says you're doing this to hurt her, that you're trying to damage her career. Clara is your boss and your affair partner. Her career is not my concern. She's worried you're going to make this public, that you're going to tell her husband." "Am I?" "Are you?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Sarah, think about this. If you destroy Clara's marriage, if you make this a public scandal, it affects me too. My career, my reputation. Is that really what you want? To drag everyone through the mud? What I want is a fair divorce settlement. What happens to Clara is between her and her husband. Her husband doesn't need to know. He's a good man. This would devastate him. Then she probably shouldn't have been sleeping with my husband for over a year." David grabbed the counter, his knuckles white. "How long have you known? Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters. You've been lying to me, pretending everything was fine while you, planned this? Gathered evidence? Hired lawyers? Who does that? Someone who was married to a man who thought she was too simple to notice he was cheating? Someone who understood that evidence and documentation would be necessary to protect herself. Someone who learned to be strategic because she had no other choice. You recorded me." Patricia showed me the transcripts. Private conversations in my own car. Conversations about me, about how trusting and simple I am, about how I don't ask complicated questions. I thought those were particularly illuminating. His face crumpled. For the first time since this started, I saw something that looked like genuine remorse. "I didn't mean those things, not really. I was just justifying your affair to your affair partner. Making yourself feel better about what you were doing. It doesn't matter, David. You said them. You meant them at the time. And they helped me understand exactly who I was married to. I love you." "No, you don't. You love Clara, or you love the idea of Clara, the brilliant senior partner who challenges you intellectually. I'm just the second-grade teacher you're legally obligated to. But not for much longer. Sarah, please," his voice broke. "We can work this out. I'll end things with Clara. We can go to counseling. Start over." "Why would I want to do that?" "Because we're married. Because we built a life together. 7 years, Sarah, that has to mean something." It did mean something, past tense. You're the one who decided it didn't mean enough. He sank into a chair at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing, actually. I want what's legally mine from the marriage. I want you to sign the settlement agreement. And I want you to leave me alone. The settlement Patricia proposed is unreasonable. Then make a counteroffer." That's how negotiations work. She wants me to admit fault. To acknowledge the affair in legal documents. You did have an affair. You told me yourself. In extensive detail. But if I admit it legally, it affects everything. My promotion, my reputation, Clara's position. The firm has morality clauses. And there it was. The real reason for his panic. That sounds like a problem you should have considered before you started sleeping with your boss. Sarah, I'm begging you, be reasonable. Take 50% and we'll part as friends. Don't make this ugly. Friends? I plated my stir-fry, the movement mechanical. David, friends don't tell each other they're too simple to understand complicated things. Friends don't dismiss each other's careers as adorable hobbies. Friends don't fuck other people and then come home and kiss their friend goodnight like nothing is wrong. We're not friends. We're not even spouses anymore, not really. We're just two people negotiating the end of a contract. Jesus Christ. You've turned into someone I don't recognize. I've stopped being who you wanted me to be. There's a difference. He stood up slowly, like he'd aged a decade in the past 3 days. I'll have my attorney contact yours. But Sarah? This isn't over. I'll fight for what's mine. Please do. I'm counting on it. After he left, I ate my stir-fry in silence. It was perfectly cooked, vegetables still crisp, sauce balanced between sweet and savory. I'd always been a good cook. David had stopped noticing years ago. My phone rang. Not David this time. A number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Whitmore? A man's voice, unfamiliar. My name is Richard Whitmore, Clara's husband. I believe we need to talk. We met at a coffee shop in the Loop, neutral territory where neither of us had history. Richard Whitmore was 41, handsome in a distinguished way, with graying temples and kind eyes that looked tired. Thank you for meeting me, he said, already halfway through what looked like his third espresso. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I should. But you said it was important. I got a package yesterday. Anonymous. Photographs, time-stamped surveillance, audio transcripts. Everything documenting my wife's affair with your husband. He pulled out a folder, his hands shaking slightly. I assume you're responsible? My attorney may have arranged for that information to reach you. You deserve to know the truth. No. How long have you known? 11 months. He closed his eyes. Jesus, I suspected something 3 months ago. She was distant, distracted, coming home later and later, but I told myself I was being paranoid, that she was just stressed about work. He laughed bitterly. Work, that's rich. I'm sorry. Are you? You're divorcing David, taking him for everything according to the paperwork I've seen. You've hired investigators, attorneys, built a case. You're destroying him. Why would you be sorry about what happens to Clara and me? Because you didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I, but we're both paying the price for their choices. He studied me for a long moment. You're not what I expected. Clara described you as simple, sweet but intellectually limited. Someone who wouldn't understand what they were doing even if she saw it. She was wrong, clearly. He opened the folder, looking at the photographs with an expression of pain so raw I almost looked away. 53 documented meetings. Over a year. They've been doing this longer than I was suspicious. I shared a bed with her, made love to her, talked about our future together, and she was lying to my face the entire time. I know the feeling. What are you going to do? With the information, I mean. My attorney says you could make this very public. Destroy Clara's career, probably David's too. What do you want me to do? He looked up, surprised. Why would my opinion matter? Because you're a victim in this too. If I expose their affair publicly, it affects your life, your privacy. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want to handle your divorce quietly. Quietly. He laughed again, hollow. Clara wants quiet. Her attorney has already contacted mine, suggesting we handle this discreetly, avoid a public scandal that could damage her professional standing. She's worried about her partnership. What do you want? I want her to feel what I'm feeling right now. This hollow, gutted sensation like someone reached into my chest and pulled out everything that mattered. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. I want her professional life to burn the way she burned our marriage. Then we should coordinate our approaches. My attorney is pursuing David for full asset division. Clara's professional conduct is part of that case. If you pursue Clara for the same, if we both make our cases public, their firm will have no choice but to investigate. Their firm! Richard's expression hardened. Rothschild and Associates, where Clara has been a senior partner for 6 years. Where she sits on the ethics committee. The fucking ethics committee, and she's been sleeping with her direct report while advocating for his promotion. Do you have an attorney? I do now. Hired him this morning after I saw the evidence. His name is Marcus Brennan. He's exec, specializes in high-profile divorces with professional misconduct components. Patricia Reeves is representing me. Perhaps our attorneys should coordinate their approach. Patricia Reeves. Richard smiled for the first time. Clara's terrified of her. She said hiring Reeves meant you were going nuclear. I am. Good. He closed the folder. I'm not angry with you, Mrs. Whitmore. I know Clara will try to paint you as vindictive, as someone trying to destroy innocent people. But you're not destroying anything. You're just making sure the damage they caused is visible. Call me Sarah! Richard. He extended his hand and I shook it. Let's burn their careers down together. The next week moved with the inexorable momentum of dominoes falling. Marcus Webb delivered his final surveillance report, 53 meetings, all documented, all with timestamps and locations. Patricia filed amended divorce papers including professional misconduct allegations. Samuel Chen submitted his ethics report to the board of directors at Rothschild and Associates. And then things started happening quickly. On Monday, David called 18 times. I didn't answer. On Tuesday, Clara requested an emergency meeting with her own attorney. According to Richard, who was now texting me regular updates, she'd come home at 3 a.m. drunk and crying, saying everything was falling apart. On Wednesday, Jennifer Martinez filed a discrimination lawsuit against Rothschild and Associates, claiming she'd been passed over for promotion in favor of David Whitmore due to his personal relationship with senior partner Clara Whitmore. The law firm representing her cited anonymous evidence that had been provided by a concerned party. On Thursday, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. Both David and Clara were placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation of ethics violations. On Friday, the FBI showed up at Rothschild and Associates requesting records related to David Whitmore's client accounts and partnership track. Samuel Chen had found something in his investigation, some suggestion of financial impropriety beyond just the affair. He hadn't told me what, exactly. He just said, let's let the professionals handle this part. I taught my classes. Helped Tommy Chen with his reading comprehension. Supervised lunch duty. Attended a faculty meeting about the spring curriculum. Normal life continuing in parallel to the controlled demolition of my marriage. My students made Mother's Day cards, even though the holiday was still weeks away. Emma Richardson drew me a picture of a teacher standing in front of a classroom, all the students smiling, hearts floating above their heads. This is you, she said proudly. Because you're the best teacher. Thank you, Emma. This is beautiful. Are you sad today, Mrs. Whitmore? You look sad. Just tired, sweetheart. But your picture made me feel better. She hugged me, unself-conscious and pure, and I held on to her for a moment longer than necessary. 7-year-olds, I thought. They saw more than adults gave them credit for. 2 weeks after David's confession, Richard and I met again, this time with both our attorneys present. Patricia's conference room had a view of Lake Michigan, gray and churning under April clouds. The board has completed its preliminary investigation, Marcus Brennan said, pulling out a thick document. They found sufficient evidence of ethics violations to warrant Clara's immediate termination. She's being offered a resignation in lieu of firing, which would preserve some dignity and her pension. But her partnership is over. What about David? I asked. Terminated for cause, Patricia said. The FBI investigation is ongoing, but regardless of those findings, the firm can't keep an associate who is involved in a quid pro quo relationship with a senior partner. His promotion is obviously denied. His severance package is the minimum required by law. Clara's fighting it, Richard said quietly. She's retained her own attorney, claims the affair was consensual and separate from professional decisions. She's arguing that her advocacy for David was based purely on merit. That argument falls apart under scrutiny. Samuel Chen said, pulling up a presentation on his laptop. I've documented 19 instances where Clara made decisions that directly benefited David professionally during the course of their affair. Client assignments, team placements, performance reviews, bonus allocations. All of it correlates directly with their relationship timeline. Can she prove merit? I asked. She can try. But Jennifer Martinez's performance records show she consistently outperformed David in every metric. Billable hours, client satisfaction, case outcomes. There's no objective measure by which David should have been promoted ahead of her. The only differential is his relationship with Clara. So Clara loses her partnership and David loses his job, Richard said. What about criminal charges? The FBI investigation. Samuel's expression turned serious. That's still developing. I found some irregularities in how David was handling client accounts. Funds moved between accounts in ways that aren't technically illegal but are ethically questionable. Clara signed off on all of it. If the FBI determines there was actual fraud involved, if they find evidence of money laundering or embezzlement, then we're talking about federal charges. For both of them? I asked. Potentially. Clara, as his supervisor, had responsibility to oversee his client work. If she knowingly allowed improper conduct, she's liable too. Richard leaned back in his chair. So they could both go to prison. It's possible. But more likely, they'll face professional consequences, regulatory sanctions, and civil penalties. The Bar Association will investigate Clara's conduct. David might lose his law license. Both of them will be effectively blacklisted in the legal industry. Good, Richard said flatly. Patricia looked at me. Sarah, you understand that once the FBI investigation becomes public, this becomes a news story. Not front page, but definitely in the legal community press. Chicago Lawyer Magazine, Above the Law blog, that sort of thing. Your name will be attached to it. I teach second grade. I don't think my students' parents read Above the Law. Still, you'll be known as the woman whose divorce exposed a major law firm scandal. Some people will admire you for it. Others will say you're vindictive. Let them say whatever they want. I didn't create this scandal. David and Clara did. I'm just making sure it doesn't stay hidden. All right then. Patricia made notes on her legal pad. We proceed as planned. Full disclosure, maximum pressure. And we let the consequences fall where they may. Three weeks after David's confession, Clara showed up at my school. I was in my classroom during planning period, creating a bulletin board display about poetry. Spring poems my students had written, decorated with construction paper flowers and butterflies. The classroom door was open to let in the hallway breeze. Mrs. Whitmore? I turned to find Clara standing in the doorway. She looked terrible. She'd lost weight, dark circles under her eyes, her expensive suit hanging loose on her frame. She'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. You can't be here, I said calmly. This is a school. You need to check in at the front office. I did. I told them I was a parent considering enrollment. They gave me a visitor badge. She held it up, her hand shaking slightly. We need to talk. No, we don't. All communication should go through our attorneys. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I considered calling security. Having her removed. But something in her desperate expression made me curious. Fine, 5 minutes. But we're not doing this in my classroom. I grabbed my keys and led her down the hallway to an empty conference room. She sat down heavily, like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Thank you for seeing me. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I want to hear what you think you could possibly say that would matter. I want you to call off your attorneys. Stop the investigation. Richard said you're coordinating your approaches, making this as public and destructive as possible. I'm asking you to stop. Why would I do that? Because this is destroying innocent people. My children, Sarah. My 15-year-old son read about his mother's affair in the school newspaper because some enterprising journalism student found the court records. My daughter won't speak to me. My father had to resign from his board position to avoid the scandal affecting his company. Those sound like consequences of your actions, not mine. You're enjoying this. Watching me suffer. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm simply ensuring that the truth is known and that people face appropriate consequences for their choices. Clara's composure cracked. It was just an affair. People have affairs every day. It doesn't mean we deserve to have our entire lives destroyed. It wasn't just an affair. You used your position as David's supervisor to advance his career in exchange for a sexual relationship. That's abuse of power. It's professional misconduct. And it hurt other people, like Jennifer Martinez, who lost opportunities she'd earned because you were playing favorites with your lover. Jennifer Martinez is a vindictive bitch who is suing your former firm because you violated ethics standards. And she's going to win, Clara, because the documentation is overwhelming. Clara stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, my students were at recess, playing on the equipment, their laughter floating up through the spring air. You don't understand what it's like in that world? The pressure, the competition. David and I connected over our work. We understood each other. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't strategic. It just happened. For over a year, 53 documented meetings, including times when you mocked me to him, when you called me simple and trusting and too intellectually limited to notice what was happening. She turned, surprise on her face. You heard that? I heard everything. Every conversation in his car. Every cruel comment. Every strategic discussion about how to keep me in the dark. You didn't just have an affair, Clara. You actively enjoyed deceiving me. You took pleasure in the fact that you stolen my husband and I was too stupid to realize it. I never said you were stupid. No, you said I was simple. Sweet but limited, unable to think in complicated terms. Should I play you the recordings? I have them all. Her face went white. Recordings are illegal in Illinois without consent. Actually, Illinois law allows recording of conversations when there's a reasonable expectation that criminal activity might be discussed. Professional misconduct, ethics violations, fraud, all of that qualified. Patricia made sure everything we collected would be admissible. You planned this. From the beginning. No, from the middle. From the moment I suspected something was wrong, I started documenting everything. Because unlike what you and David thought, I'm not too simple to protect myself. Clara sank back into her chair. What do you want? Money? I'll pay you to make this stop. Name your price. I don't want your money. I want what I'm entitled to from my marriage. I want David to face consequences for his actions. And I want you to understand that treating people like they read beneath you comes with a cost. I never treated you like you absolutely did. You met me twice at firm events. Both times you were dismissive, condescending. You asked what I did, and when I said I taught second grade, you said, "How sweet." Like I was a child playing dress-up, not a professional with a graduate degree. You decided I wasn't worth your respect, and that made it easier to betray me. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your life imploded. But you're not sorry for what you did. If none of this had come out, if David and I had divorced quietly and you'd kept your partnership, you'd still be thinking of me as the sweet, simple wife who never knew what hit her. Clara stood up abruptly. I came here hoping to appeal to your compassion, to ask you woman to woman to show mercy. But I see now that you don't have any. I showed you the same mercy you showed me. None. She walked to the door, then paused. David's completely broken. Did you know that? He's lost 20 pounds. He's not sleeping. He's drinking himself sick every night. His parents won't speak to him. He had to move in with his brother because he can't afford rent. You've destroyed him. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone could see it. I hope someday you understand what you've done. I understand perfectly. I protected myself from people who thought I was too simple to matter. I ensured that actions have consequences. And I made sure that other women won't be deceived the way I was. After she left, I stood in the empty conference room for a long moment. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally hitting. I'd faced down the woman who'd stolen my husband, who'd mocked me, who'd thought I was too stupid to fight back. And I'd won. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks after David's confession. In the end, he agreed to everything Patricia demanded. He didn't have a choice, really. The evidence was overwhelming. The consequences of fighting would have been worse, and his resources were already depleted from legal fees. I got 73% of marital assets, the apartment, $840,000 from the liquidation of investment accounts, David's pension and his partnership bonus that he'd received just before being terminated, 5 years of spousal support, and a clause in the divorce agreement that prevented him from ever contesting the settlement. Clara and Richard's divorce settled similarly. Clara lost her partnership, her position on various boards, and most of her social standing. Richard got their house, custody of their children, and a substantial settlement. Clara was last seen moving to Phoenix, where apparently no one knew about the scandal yet. The FBI investigation concluded 4 months later. No criminal charges, but significant civil penalties for both David and Clara related to client account mismanagement. Neither of them would work in law again. Jennifer Martinez's discrimination lawsuit settled for an undisclosed amount. But Richard heard through connections that it was 7 figures, she'd been made whole, and then some. 6 months after David's confession, I stood in a new apartment in Lincoln Park. Not as expensive as the penthouse, but mine entirely. The mortgage was in my name alone. The furniture was chosen by me for me. The walls were painted colors I liked, not decorator neutral shades chosen for resale value. I'd started a foundation. the Sarah Whitmore Foundation for Professional Women in Transition. We helped women escaping difficult marriages, provided legal resources, connected them with attorneys and investigators and therapists. We'd already helped 32 women in 6 months. Marcus Webb did pro bono investigation work for us. Patricia Reeves provided free legal consultations. Samuel Chun taught workshops on financial literacy and documentation. They'd all seen what happened when women protected themselves, and they wanted to help others do the same. My teaching contract had been renewed. The principal told me I was the most organized, most prepared teacher she'd ever worked with. If I ever wanted to move into administration, she'd support me. I declined. I liked teaching. I liked spending my days with 7-year-olds who still thought honesty was a given, who trusted easily, who saw the world as full of possibilities. They reminded me that not everyone was calculating and cruel. That simplicity could be a strength rather than a weakness. Emma Richardson brought me flowers on the last day of school, wild flowers she'd picked herself. "For the best teacher ever," she said, hugging me tight. "Thank you, sweetheart." What a perfect gift! Are you happy now, Mrs. Whitmore? You look sad for a long time, but now you smile more. I am happy. Sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better, but I'm definitely happy now. 1 year after David's confession, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I'd stopped screening calls months ago. "Sarah?" "It's David." I hadn't heard his voice in months. He sounded different. Older, rougher, like he'd aged years in the 12 months since our divorce. "Hello, David. I just thought I wanted to talk. If that's okay, just for a minute." "What about?" "I've been in therapy. My therapist suggested I call, make amends where possible. Not for you, but for me. Part of recovery." He paused. "I'm living in Cleveland now, working as a paralegal. It's not what I had before, but it's something. I'm sober. 6 months now. I'm glad you're getting help. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. For the affair, for the things I said, for not seeing you clearly. You were never simple or limited. You were just kind, and I mistook that for weakness." "Okay, that's it. Just okay." "What do you want me to say, David? That I forgive you? That we can be friends, that I'm happy for your recovery? I'm glad you're working on yourself. Genuinely. But your apology doesn't change anything that happened. It doesn't erase the year of betrayal or the cruelty or the damage. I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I lost. What I lost! What I threw away because I was arrogant and stupid. You didn't throw me away. You chose to betray me. There's a difference. One implies carelessness. The other was deliberate. Silence on the line. Then, you're right. I did choose it. Every meeting, every lie, every time I came home and pretended everything was fine. I chose all of it. Yes, you did. Do you hate me? No. 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 I did for a while. But hate is exhausting, and you're not worth the energy. I don't hate you, David. I just don't think about you much anymore. That's somehow worse than hate. Maybe, but it's honest. I looked around my apartment at the life I'd built in the year since our divorce. I need to go. I have dinner plans with someone. That's none of your business. Right, of course. I hope you're happy, Sarah, that's all. I am, completely. After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long moment. The apartment smelled like the garlic bread I'd made for dinner. My dining table was set for 4, my foundation co-founders coming over for our monthly planning session. We were expanding operations, hiring our first full-time staff member, reaching more women who needed help. My phone buzzed with a text. "Patricia, running 5 minutes late, traffic on Lakeshore Drive, save me wine." I smiled and poured 4 glasses. Red wine, good stuff, not the expensive bottles David used to buy to impress clients, but the kind I actually liked. The doorbell rang. Marcus and Samuel arrived together, carrying notebooks and laptops and the energy of people who'd been working on something important. "We found 3 more women in situations similar to what you went through," Marcus said as I let them in. 1 in Milwaukee, 2 here in Chicago. All married to professionals, all being systematically diminished, all with suspected affairs. "They need help. Then we'll help them." I handed them each a glass of wine. That's what we do. Patricia arrived with her files, her sharp mind already working through strategy. I'm working on a handbook. What to do when you suspect infidelity. A legal and practical guide. I want to publish it through the foundation. Distribute it to therapists and women's groups. I love that. Let's workshop it tonight. We spent 3 hours around my dining table, planning and strategizing, helping women we'd never met protect themselves from people who thought they were too trusting, too simple, too kind to fight back. At midnight, after everyone left, I stood on my balcony looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, David was in Cleveland, starting over. Clara was in Phoenix, rebuilding from nothing. Richard had remarried, according to his last text, a kind woman who made him laugh again. And I was here, free, independent, running a foundation that helped other women find their strength. Teaching second graders who still believed in honesty and fairness, living a life that was entirely my own. My phone sat silent on the counter. No more calls from David begging me to reconsider. No more threats from Clara's attorneys. No more surveillance updates from Marcus. Just silence and peace and the gentle hum of my own life moving forward. I thought about answering David's call earlier, about the conversation we'd had. He'd wanted forgiveness or understanding or some kind of closure. But closure wasn't something I needed from him. I'd found it on my own, in the year I'd spent building something new from the ruins of our marriage. The city lights spread out before me, millions of windows, millions of lives. Somewhere out there were other women who needed help, who needed someone to tell them that being trusting wasn't a weakness, that being kind didn't mean being stupid, that there was strength in documentation and strategy and protecting yourself. I'd be there for them. The way no one had been there for me until I'd learned to be there for myself. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Whitmore? My name is Jennifer. I got your information from a friend. I think my husband is having an affair with his boss. I don't know what to do. Can you help? I smiled and typed back. Yes, let's meet tomorrow. I'll help you understand your options. And Jennifer, whatever happens, you're going to be okay. I promise, because that's what I'd learned in the year since David's confession. That you could be betrayed, diminished, mocked, and underestimated. But if you were strategic, if you documented everything, if you built a team and protected yourself, you could emerge stronger than before. Simple. That's what they'd called me. Sweet, trusting, unable to think in complicated terms. They'd been wrong. And now I spent my days proving it, one woman at a time.